On today's episode of the Coping Hour, we're going to talk about college football, a little Heisman race, Bo Nix, Michael Penix. We also cover the NFL. We're going to talk about the Portland Trail Blazers, James Harden, and another edition of Knicks Pistons. Stick around. Good morning, good afternoon, whatever time of day it is that you are listening, folks. Thank you very, very much for listening. Date today is the 13th of November, year of our Lord 2023. Welcome to the first Monday edition of the Coping Hour, which means one thing and one thing only. We get to talk about some football. College football? Is it back on the menu? Nick, I think it's week 11. Kind of been back on the menu for like 2 months. Maybe. But I got to tell you, this past weekend was the first time that top to bottom I was looking at the slate, and I was like, we might get some games here. And I've done that a few times this year, but what ends up happening is no important teams lose, which honestly did kind of happen this week. Like, not that many consequential losses happened, but the content, rather the contents of the game themselves were very compelling, and we'll get to all of those in just a second. But, like, what has it been? You know, usually there's that one game every week, like TCU, Colorado. You have Ohio State, Notre Dame. You have, even a week ago, hell, you had a potential game of the year candidate brewing in Tuscaloosa between Alabama and LSU, and then Jaden Daniels goes out with a concussion. Boy, did he make up for it this week, right? Probably going to get invited to New York after that performance, and we're going to get to that here today. What else has it been? Like Georgia playing with their food just to end up winning by 3 scores, like at halftime when the game break goes out nationwide, like, whoa, Bulldogs in trouble. And then the next time they flash back to the game, they're up 2.5 scores. It just hasn't been very fun, right? But this week was good, and let's talk about it. We start with Michigan, Penn State. Are we just not making fun of Drew Aller because he's a 19-year-old kid and it's like not that nice to do, and it's like kind of weird for most of us to do because most of us are like well above 19 years old? If that's why, fair, valid. That makes complete sense, and I think we should all adhere to that societal standard or norm. However, for the next 45 seconds, I'm going to just play devil's advocate. Has there ever been a time where you've watched a quarterback more this season than Drew Aller and been like, he's practice with these guys, right? Like, he's in the film sessions. He goes to meetings. He knows their names, right? Because between this game and the Ohio State game, the amount of times that he just has no idea what route is going to be run, or at least his receivers have no idea what route is going to be run, and he just kind of throws it into this open space. Like, it's one thing for J.J. McCarthy to not throw more than like 10 pass attempts and not throw for like 100 yards because Michigan didn't have to, because they were able to run the football literally, not hyperbolically, literally every single play in that second half, which honestly was kind of refreshing to see, even though I don't like Michigan and I never will. There was this kind of like a Big Ten football team in the year of our Lord 2023 is running the shit out of the football. That felt amazing. That felt amazing to see. But on the other end of the field, it's like, we blamed that OC a lot after that Ohio State game. I didn't feel like enough blame was on Drew Aller. But again, I feel like that's because he's 19, and it's like, dude, he'll figure it out. Like, give him a year, he'll figure it out. OC finally gets fired after this game, and I'm just kind of wondering, like, why did we ever even believe in Penn State to begin with? Because when they're scheduling fucking UMass on their homecoming, yeah, he looked pretty good. He looked really, really good, but otherwise wasn't entirely compelling. That game was never close. The score may have indicated that it was, and there were a few of those games today. Again, we're going to talk about those. It wasn't close. Then after that, I guess I'm just going to chronicle my personal journey on this previous college football Saturday. After that, I flipped over to Texas Tech and Kansas. Wow. Not too many notes on that one, other than it was an absolute barn burner, and Texas Tech, despite having a losing record, has been a really fun team to watch this year. They've been really scrappy. I think people have already forgotten that, like, in week 2 of this year, coming off an 81-7 win over Portland State, the Oregon Ducks go down to Lubbock and almost tank their season immediately. They almost lost everything in week 2 because of those Texas Tech Red Raiders. However, I don't think anybody is going to pay attention to them again because they don't really have a winning record. After that, Illinois, Indiana, no more notes. Again, not too many notes other than amazing to see a Pac-12 after dark score in a Big Ten noon game. nonetheless, right? It's like Indiana and Illinois were giving the Pac-12 teams coming here sort of like a little taste, like a little, hey, we can throw the football around over here. And the fact that it was Illinois and Indiana and not like Ohio State and Michigan, is that one going to be a track meet? What do you guys think? Why don't we wait? We'll put a pin in that. We'll talk about it in a few weeks. After that game, the real main course of the day for me, well, second main course, Washington, Utah, because this Utah team has been so fun to watch these last few years, especially with Cam Rising, who unfortunately not playing this year. And in his stead, you have Bryson Barnes, you have Nate Johnson. They kind of game manage, kind of co-quarterback those first few games. Bryson Barnes has the starting job, Nate Johnson has the starting job, then Bryson Barnes has the starting job again. And for a Washington team that, after that Oregon game, ever since then, the wheels have kind of they've been wobbly. They haven't fallen off, but they've definitely been wobbly. You had a troubling game against Arizona State where you're like, what the fuck? What's going on here? Yeah, that second half, they kind of put that to bed a little bit. Total dominance, both sides of the ball. I don't think Utah even scored a point in that second half. I think the only boneheaded play that they had was that pick six. Well, that should have been a pick six, but the guy dropped the ball at the 1 yard line. Utah gets the ball, ends up being a safety, and that was really, it might as well have been a pick six, right? I guess for the sake of excitement, it was like, oh, whoa, a safety. Like, I just love watching a good old-fashioned safety happen. Honestly, it was also the first time I had seen a guy drop the ball like that in real time in like 10 years. I think the last time was when the Marcus Mariota Ducks were in Utah like a decade ago. Utah, it was a night game. Utah housed like an 80-yard slant, but the dude dropped it at like the 1 yard line. The difference here was Oregon actually had the presence of mind to pick that ball up and run the opposite way, and they actually scored. I'm pretty sure that touchdown ended up standing. Michael Penix, this Heisman is coming down to the Pac-12 championship, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But just on Penix specifically, there was a sequence in this game, I think it was in that second quarter, he does a little dump off to the running back Dylan Johnson. And Dylan Johnson, I don't remember really for whatever reason, but he drops the football, right? I don't remember if he kind of got tangled up in his legs, if he was, his eyes were just ahead of actually catching the ball, whatever it was. He drops the ball, and he's pissed, right? It was a little 2 yard dump off, but it could have gone for a first down. Penix just starts laughing. He just starts smiling. And it was so clear in that moment that these guys in Washington just have fun. And it's really hard not to if you're Michael Penix with that receiving core. It's insane. Like, these are NFL receivers catching passes from an NFL quarterback. It blows my mind that between Bo Nix and Michael Penix, we're talking about these guys like they're fucking second rounders. And we're talking about Drake May like he's going to be going first, like he's going to be going third. This is insane to me, because I look at Drake May the same way that I did when Sam Darnold came out of the draft. And at the risk, like I'm sounding like I'm being revisionist, and now that we know that Sam Darnold isn't like the fucking second coming of Christ, right? He's just a guy who might have a 10-year NFL career, which is not nothing. That's not nothing, but when it's behind Brock Purdy or when it's behind Baker Mayfield, it's a lot different than when you're like the guy for the Jets, like everybody thought that he was going to be. I see the same thing, which is fucking nothing. So it infuriates me that we're talking about these two guys between, but like when Oregon and Washington played, one of the talking points on the broadcast was like, ooh, maybe whoever wins this game, like, they move up into the early second. What the fuck are we talking about? These are the two best quarterbacks in America, and it's not particularly close, right? You can talk about Caleb Williams if you want, but I also would like to say my only comment on Caleb Williams is I don't know how many times we can throw the word generational around. That's not to say that he's not. It's not to say that he actually is. You know how many guys are actually generational? Not most of them. Not nearly as many as we like to think that there is. Victor Wembanyama, that is a generational player, right? Patrick Mahomes, that is a generational player. They are far and few between. They do not come out of every single draft in every single sport every single year the way that people like to think that they do. And I understand why that they do it. I'm pretty sure you do too. It's just the cycle. It's how it works. You got to get people to sink their teeth into this product, and that is how you do it. But as it stands, Pac-12 championship is going to determine the Heisman. Jaden Daniels is going to get invited. Marvin Harrison is going to get invited, but it is going to be Bo Nix or it is going to be Michael Penix because they have such unique control over their offenses and such a fundamental understanding of how to do the job and how to do the job in the systems that they're in. We talked last week about yak merchants, right? We talked about check down patties, the guys whose, their completion percentages are always historically and unfathomably high because they always make the safest throw. They're throwing these 2-yard crossing routes. They're throwing these little dump-offs, these little trailers behind the line of scrimmage, right? These screens, these RPOs. I think there's an art form to this. People like to shit on it. I think to be able to get the ball to your playmakers in space and letting them do the work, right? All you have to do is let them make the play. The difference between Bo Nix and a lot of these guys, not really Michael Penix, because he is very much like this. But if you want to do like Bo Nix and J.J. McCarthy, the difference between them is Bo Nix will uncork the shit out of the football the second that he has to. That's not to say that J.J. McCarthy doesn't throw a good deep ball, but Bo Nix throws them all the time. Case in point, he starts that game against USC 2 of 2, 161 yards, and 2 touchdowns. When you have guys like Tez Thompson, I say Tez Thompson? It's a guy that I made in Madden. When you have guys like Tez Johnson, when you have guys like Troy Franklin, even Bucky Irving coming out of the backfield, big pass catchers, Terrence Ferguson. I hate that I'm about to say Justin Herbert's little brother, but I'm blanking on his first name, so I apologize, Justin Herbert's little brother. But they have Justin Herbert's little brother. They can't lose. I don't know how they will. I was kind of terrified. For those of you who don't know, I am a Bo Nix girly, okay? I'm in his camp. I love Michael Penix more than anything in the world, and I want him to win the Heisman, but it would have to be over Bo Nix, and I don't want that to happen. Wherever Michael Penix goes in the NFL, I am a lifelong fan. Wherever Bo Nix goes in the NFL, does he bring back the Patriot way? People are asking. People are definitely asking. I'm going to be a lifelong fan. On to the NFL. Another good slate this week, but they've kind of been firing on all cylinders this year, and I don't have too many complaints there. Let's start with this. The United States has a pretty checkered history with doing some shady shit over in Europe, but I got to tell you, this Colts-Patriots game has got to be the worst and most sinister thing that they've ever done. Jonathan Taylor scores a touchdown, 7-8 minutes into the first quarter, into the game, and that was it. That was all she wrote. I don't have any more notes. Fuck that game. What I do want to talk about, actually, though, 2 weeks ago, nobody's talking about this CJ Stroud MVP thing. And then he has that just monster game, like historic game. And rightfully, people are kind of like, what? I see this publication. I don't remember what publication it was. And hey, it's my fucking show. I'm not going to veer credit to anybody else anyways. But it was like mid-season predictions for the NFL. And you're seeing stuff like Patrick Mahomes is going to win his second consecutive MVP. Reasonable. See another one. The Lions are going to finish with the number 1 seed in the NFC. Sneaky reasonable. If we want to talk about it, we can. Let's think about it. Let's do that in a minute. And then you see this other one that's like CJ Stroud is going to be in the MVP conversation. I don't know if he's going to win, but he's going to be in the conversation. I read that. I was like, what? Fast forward to Sunday, C.J. Stroud and the Houston Texans have a gutsy win on the road against the Cincinnati Bengals. We're at a point now where I thought the Bengals had kind of figured it out, and I thought that early season, like September, Joe Burrow was just like not great, I guess, and we had to get through that Jahmyr Chase, I'm 7-11, I'm always open. He's hitting them now, right? He had like 5 receptions over 100 yards yesterday. Even Tyler Boyd had a pretty solid game over 100 yards receiving, I believe. But C.J. Stroud was incredible. I think the thing that impresses me the most about him it's the interception numbers. He throws that pick against Cincinnati. It was only his second this year. Honestly, I would argue that it was his first because not all interceptions are created equally, and you have to contextualize them. What happened after his first interception that he threw? I don't remember who it was against, but it was earlier this year, a couple weeks ago. C.J. Stroud throws an interception. and on the run back, it gets fumbled. Houston recovers it. So they lost possession for all of 15 seconds. That doesn't even count. You know what I mean? I'm pretty sure they ended up with better field position because of where the ball ended up getting fumbled after it was intercepted. It might as well have been a completed pass. So this one that he had against Cincinnati really was kind of like the first one that he threw, which is bizarre. And I'm not really here to do like a whole Bryce Young versus CJ Stroud thing because it's still early, and I would argue that a lot of the shit that's gone wrong in Carolina hasn't always been Bryce Young's fault. He hasn't always helped, but it has not been his fault. And to both their credits, like they both have guys to throw to, right? So it's not entirely a weapons issue. Is that thing true? I've tried to look into it. I cannot find any information on this. Is it true that CJ Stroud told the Texans to draft Tank Dell? Is that a thing? Because if that's a thing, and he's already like he gets drafted and he's immediately on the horn with the GM, like, hey, I see you guys have this pick. I don't remember where Tank Dell got drafted. This compensatory pick in whatever round. Well, maybe we should use it on this guy. That's incredible, and I love hearing that. Is he going to be in the mix? I don't know. It is still technically kind of early, but if he, it's easy to say if he continues on this trajectory, continues at this pace, that it's definitely going to be something that we're going to have to talk about at some point this year. Patrick Mahomes winning his second consecutive MVP does kind of feel like a long shot right now, just because the Chiefs are survivable. They are good. They are still the Kansas City Chiefs. We don't need to do this thing where it's like, ooh, is the dynasty over? We tried doing that with Alabama, and how did that go? They're in the SEC championship game again. So the Chiefs are going to be fine. But Patrick Mahomes has definitely looked the most vulnerable that he has this year. There have been a lot more throws and a lot more games this year where you come away going like, kind of not a great game from him. And by his standards, what does that mean? He was human. Like, he's been human this season, and there have just kind of been those moments. But because, again, it's Andy Reid, it's the Kansas City Chiefs, you trust them to get it together. This 49ers game, I only want to talk about this for a second because, first of all, absolutely hilarious that they're up 34-3. They have a 4th and goal, and they are trying desperately to feed Christian McCaffrey to get him this touchdown to extend and I believe break the record for most consecutive games with a touchdown of any kind in NFL history. Couldn't get it done. I want to talk a little bit about Trevor Lawrence because I don't know if we're ever going to say that he's like a top 7 quarterback. I think we're just going to go top 8. I'm serious. I think that 8 to 13 range is like perfect for him. And the only reason I use that number specifically is because we talked the other day about how, when was the last time a non-top 7 quarterback won a Super Bowl? And we did get a few comments and actually a few emails, so shout out to you guys for this. Let me plug the email really quick, actually, if you're just listening to this on Spotify and aren't able to watch the video. copinghoursubs@gmail.com, spelled phonetically. If you need to pull it up, the video is actually supported on Spotify, so if you feel inclined to send in an email, and we'll read some a little bit later in the show, that is where you can do it. But Trevor Lawrence is, I think, always going to be one of those guys where he's going to win you games. He might get you into the playoffs. He might win you a playoff game. But that's kind of it. And that's not the worst thing in the world. You know, we talked about Penn State earlier, and there are a lot of Penn State fans out there who are like, how do we move on from James Franklin, and who is going to be the guy? Who's going to be the guy that can win us games and can deliver us a championship, get us to the promised land that we know we are built for? The grass is not always as green as you'd like to imagine that it is. There are a lot of teams in college football that would love to win 9 or 10 games consistently every single year. I'm a Michigan State fan, right? I would love that right now. I would love to be able to look at my team and be like, you guys are winning 9 games this year. Not like we might win 2. And by the way, I thought that even before the Mel Tucker shit happened. I was like, this team's not going to win anything. So I only make that point to say, it's not the worst thing if you're a Jags fan to have Trevor Lawrence around, right? He makes the right plays most of the time. He wins games most of the time. They're 6-3. They were never going to win that game. I don't care that they were home. They were never going to win that game against San Francisco. It's a bury the tape game. You're playing against a team that started 5-0, right? They drop 3 consecutively. Then they go into the bye week. Of course, they're pissed off. I don't understand, honestly, how San Francisco ever loses with that roster on both sides of the football. I don't understand with how many weapons they have. You look at that defensive front. The fuck are you supposed to do? dude. And with how many weapons they have on offense, I am so serious when I say I don't understand how they lose games. Any given Sunday, though, right? It's the NFL. Speaking of any given Sunday, my best team in the NFL, the Baltimore Ravens, dropping a game against the Cleveland Browns. The witching hour was off the charts this week. That pick six that Cleveland had in that game to kind of like, whoa, wait a second, what do we have going on here? That defense is awesome. That defense is real. We look at, and by the way, the Browns aren't bad. So this is not a bad loss for Baltimore. They've been playing out of their minds. I'd argue out of their depth, and that's because, we kind of maybe gassed them a little bit too much playing Detroit and playing Seattle, because there's that insane stat out there. What is it? Lamar Jackson is 17-1 in his career against NFC teams. We don't have the tape. We don't have the experience. We're not used to it. With Detroit, it's also tough because we've historically just been bad against mobile quarterbacks. But that's what you're seeing with Lamar this year, is it's not that he's not mobile. He's just staying in the pocket, and he's waiting for his receivers to find the soft spot to get into open space. There are so many sequences where you watch Lamar Jackson this year, and you think any other year he would have taken off by now. Any other year he would have been out of the pocket 3 seconds ago. But he will sit in there. He'll take a hit if he has to. So he's really earning that contract. He's earning every single penny of it. Baltimore's going to be fine. I still think, by my best approximation, there's a chance that they might be the best team in the NFL. Let's talk a little bit about the Lions. Man, leaving points on the board is really starting to piss me off. We won the game. We went 1-0 this week. I have literally zero complaints. We're 7-2 for the first time since 2014, and it feels actually real. In 2014, it didn't feel as real because it still felt like, any given week you could get bullshitted out of a win. And I think that is the major takeaway from this Lions-Chargers game. That is a game 9 times out of 10. Any other year, we lose that game. Same old Lions, right? Whether it's the refs, whether it's us, whether it's that fourth down call doesn't actually go our way and we don't get it. Justin Herbert drives down the field. Cameron Dicker, I think, is their kicker. Bangs it through the uprights. Lions lose. Any other year, that's what happens. But it's the brand new Lions. I cannot explain what it feels like to root for a team that lives and dies by going for it on fourth down. If you're an Oregon Ducks fan, Dan Lanning loves to do that. Nick Sirianni loves to do that. Mike McDaniel, he likes to do that. Brandon Staley, we saw that he likes to do that, and he also has a history of doing that. The anxiety that it brings. Running the ball, running like a draw with Monty on 4th and 5, and converting, by the way, is the biggest dick move I have seen in the NFL this year. You know what was number 2? When Dan Campbell faked a punt on his own 25-yard line in the first game of the season in Arrowhead. A drive that ended up in a touchdown, by the way. It's the adrenaline that I experience in these games. That 75-yard touchdown by David Montgomery. You talk about a game of inches. That paint on that sideline was rubbing right up against that cleat. Did he step out? Hey, it wasn't indisputable. I guess he didn't. Jahmyr Gibbs. Motherfuckers said they had so much to say when we drafted him. He drafted a gadget player, 12th overall. Reach. Despite reports coming out that it was essentially a bidding war to try and get a pick where you could actually draft Jahmyr Gibbs. Everybody seemingly wanted him, right? And that's why what people say, you usually hear GMs say this, when they get up to the podium after making a pick, maybe the player's up there, it's like the inductory press conference. We got our guy, and that's all that matters. Teams operate with I don't care if we overdrafted, if we under, whatever. People said the same thing about Jack Campbell. They're like, why are you taking a linebacker this high? Drafted Sam Laporta. Why are you taking Sam Laporta this high? And then we drafted Brian Branch. People are like, oh, I love this pick. How do they feel about all those picks now? They probably feel pretty good. I imagine they feel pretty good. I feel amazing. Lions are 7-2. Let's do a quick rundown. Let me pull this up because I want to talk about the Lions potentially getting that 1 seed. Obviously, you have to tough out Philadelphia. You have to tough out San Francisco, and you have to win the rest of your games. But let's talk about what's going on with Philadelphia, their next 5 games coming off of a bye week. I don't know who they pissed off. I don't know what NFL schedule makers have beef with the Philadelphia Eagles that this is the 5-game stretch that they're playing. This upcoming Sunday, Eagles-Chiefs in Arrowhead. After that, Eagles-Bills in Philadelphia. After that, Eagles-Niners in Philadelphia. After that, Eagles-Cowboys, and then Eagles-Seattle. What? There's a real chance that they come out of these games 3-2, 2-3. They could go 4-1. Hell, they could go 5-0. If they go 5-0, it's a wrap. Like if the Philadelphia Eagles beat the Chiefs, the Bills, the 49ers, the Cowboys, and the Seahawks consecutively, it's a wrap. I don't even want to go to the playoffs. There's fucking no point. But if I'm a Lions fan, I'm looking at that. We haven't played like any division games. We played the one Thursday night game against Green Bay. We play the Bears on Sunday. We play the Bears again in a few weeks. We play Minnesota twice, and I think in the last 3 weeks of the season. On Thanksgiving, we play the Packers. So honestly, next week we play 2 division games. There's a chance that in a week and a half the Lions are 9-2. But let's try to go 1-0 with the Bears and then 1-0 with Green Bay. Take it one at a time, right? The teams that you're scared about in the NFC North, hard to come by. It's hard to come by. I'd be scared of Detroit, but that's kind of it. What about the Vikings? What about Josh Dobbs? We talked about Drew Aller earlier. Does he know the names of his receivers? Josh Dobbs actually didn't. Real life did not know the names of his receivers a week ago, and he shouldn't have. It's obviously completely different circumstances. I'm just doing a bit here. Every time I watch Minnesota, I say every time, these last 2 weeks I'm watching these Vikings, especially this Saints game. Josh Dobbs has that rushing touchdown, and I think to myself every single time, this dude needs to fucking relax. He needs to relax. He needs to calm down. Please stop using TJ Hawkinson as your safety valve, okay? Because it's working too well. It's working too well. Vikings are up to 6-4. If the Lions had dropped that game, we're talking about like a legit competition for the NFC North. You know what I mean? At least for the time being. Because I think when we really let this thing play out, I think the Vikings will be scrappy. I think there's a chance the Lions drop one of those games that we play against them, and it'll be so annoying if and when that happens. But ultimately, it's not something I'm concerned about. Is there a chance that Minnesota kind of squeaks into the playoffs? Maybe. That'd be kind of funny. It'd be awesome for them because I think everybody's kind of rooting for astronaut Josh Dobbs at this point. Astro engineer Dobbs. But I'm not too concerned about it. But that Danielle Hunter, man. Harrison Smith. Has there been a safety in recent years that has been as good and as consistent at forcing fumbles than Harrison Smith? And I am not up to date on like forced fumbled stats. Like, is Tyrann Mathieu up there? I don't know. How was Ed Reed at that? He was probably pretty good at that, but that was a while ago. Like, what are we even talking about? You know what I mean? Derwin James, he's got to be up there. But Harrison Smith, like, I'm always going to be scared of a couple guys on that Minnesota defense, especially if you get Jared Goff under pressure. That's when he makes the most mistakes, such as life as an NFL quarterback. When they're about to be hit, they'll throw a pick. Like, yeah, that happens. But it's like if you give Jared Goff a clean pocket, he's going to throw a completed pass and he's going to throw touchdowns. If you get a hand on him, I'm shaking. On to some emails, football recap over. Let's do some basketball. What do you guys think? From Ivan. Nicholas, I need to tell you how mad this makes me as a Clippers fan to watch the front office murder the future of this team. We have no first-round picks until 2030. 2030! And what do we get? A 5-game losing streak and a guy who really wanted to get traded to the LA Strippers, not the LA Clippers. I hate James Harden so much. Every time he gets what he wants, he fucks up every organization he touches. I love Kawhi and PG. I even held out hope for Russ, but there are just too many I want the ball guys on this team, and I'm so scared everybody's knees are going to crumble like they do every single year. Am I a bad person for wanting to jump ship on this team and find a new one, or do I just need to suck it up and deal with it? I haven't been following the league long enough to know if this just happens sometimes or if I have the right to be ticked. Oh, Ivan, I think you have the right to be mad because you kind of got sold a bag of fucking oregano. You know, you thought you were getting an eighth and you got oregano. I mean, I don't know how many people out there were really like, whoa, the Clippers got James Harden. Like, oh my God, this is league shattering. How many jokes were out there about, if this was the 2015 NBA season and you had Russell Westbrook, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and James Harden, you'd go 75-7, But the truth and reality is kind of like what that broadcaster said on whoever's team it was the other day when he went on that viral tirade about James Harden, which, by the way, everything that he said was right. He had a guy in Daryl Morey who was like, you are literally like the future of how we're going to be playing basketball in the NBA if you just adhere to the numbers, if you adhere to this form of basketball as it was referred to as Morey ball, right? And it all stemmed from and was predicated on your ability to shoot threes and get to the free throw line. I think the precursor, Daryl Morey said at some point on a podcast, was Kevin Martin. Like, he was the reason that he found these inefficiencies in the way that the game was played, and he wanted to exploit them because Kevin Martin spent like 2 years in Houston. First year was like 23.5 a game, like 7 threes, 5 free throws. I might have had that backwards, but he got shots up, you know what I mean? And he got to the line. So it was on relatively smaller volume than what James Harden ended up doing, right? But the foundation was there, and it was just like, okay, so who do I need to go get in order to see this vision come to fruition? And that was James Harden. Anything that he wanted, anyone that he wanted, he went and got. The Dwight Howard thing, he went and got Dwight Howard. And then James Harden was like, I don't want to play with you anymore. And Daryl Morey was like, well, that means I don't either. And then James Harden was like, I want Russell Westbrook. And Daryl Morey was like, okay, I can get you Russell Westbrook. And then after like a year, he was like, this guy, I don't really like this guy. And he was sent his ass to Washington. There has been a lot of give and take in the relationship between James Harden and James Harden's stan. And it becomes increasingly harder to root for a guy, even if he is on your basketball team, who like clearly does not give a shit and does not want to play. Like doing the thing where you're wiping dust off of your shoes while you're dribbling the ball just to step into an air ball is insane. It also wasn't that long ago, and if you wince when I say this, I implore you to think about it. Go back 8 years. How many signature moves were there in basketball? LeBron's tomahawk? Sure. Reasonable. Does Steph shooting a 3 count? Not really. Does Dame pulling up from the logo count? I don't think so. He also wasn't really doing that 8 years ago, like 2015. He wasn't doing that yet, like to the extent that we know now, right? James Harden's step back. I'm telling you, I don't know if you were in the gyms. I don't know if you were in LA Fitness. I don't know if you were at Lifetime. I don't know if you were at these open runs. Motherfuckers were doing the James Harden step back left and right because it covered so much ground and it had been so long since we'd seen that. And you had this guy who was consistently putting up disgusting numbers, who was consistently on teams who were winning 50 games. You look back at that 2018 Rockets team, I'm not entirely sure that they aren't the best team to not win a championship, maybe ever. Of the last 20 years, I'm certain that's probably true. And instead of staying the course, we talk about people thinking that the grass is always going to be greener. You're still winning 55 plus every single year. I don't know if it's 55, 50 plus every single year. And you were just a victim of circumstance. We're like, yeah, Kevin Durant went to the Warriors. It's going to be really hard to win the West after that. He got pissed after a while. He got pissed. And then Kevin Durant left. And instead of just staying the course, he was like, I got to go there. What's going on over there? Puts on a bunch of weight. Although I still don't really understand what happened with that. Was he in a goose suit? Was he goosed? Let's talk about the Clippers, though. Because if I'm a Clippers fan, over the last few years, it's just been like, man, if we can just stay healthy. If we can just stay healthy, we can really do it. Because I'm there for Clippers fans, man. You talk about the experience of a Clipper fan versus a Laker fan, even like physically going to the games at the arena at Staples. Sorry, at Crypto. What is it called now? Laker fans do not care about basketball. They care about the spectacle. Not all of them. Most of them, especially when you go to the games. Clipper fans care about the sport. They care about the product because there is no spectacle because you're the B team in your own city. I think you should ride it out just to get to that arena. You're going to have to let me know what that arena's like. I don't know if you're a Los Angeles native or a California native and you can actually go to these games. I really want to see what that arena is going to look like because I think it's going to be awesome. No, dude, I think you should be irate. James Harden was on my basketball team. I mortgaged my future. What did the Clippers really have in terms of a future as far as capital went? Yeah. They didn't really have one, so it's like they've amalgamated so many trades over the last few years that it's when you bleed that cupboard, they really did it. So it was kind of like, what's one more trade going to do? What's one more thing going to hurt? And eventually, are you going to be able to trade James Harden? Better hope it works. Got another one here from a Blazers fan. Comes to us from Doug. What's up, Nick? So glad that you're back on the tubes. Anyways, I'm a Portland Trail Blazers fan. Oof. I know it's already been a rough year. I was expecting it to be tough, but I didn't expect injuries so early on in the season. Scoot being out for the past 3 games has sucked. This season needs to be a developmental year for our young guys like Shaden Sharp and Scoot, not to mention Anthony Simon's injury, and now Time Lord has season-ending knee surgery. I mean, damn. So sad to see these guys on the bench in their plaid suits because it's Portland. Do I need to add a question to this thing? What do you think the Blazers got to do with Brogdan or Grant for this roster to be in the best position long term? Trade them or keep them? There's a good question for the show. Much love, Doug. Thanks for the email here, Doug. Now, for context, the email was sent a few days ago, and at the time, I don't think when he sent this that the report had come out yet that Scoot is going to be missing even more time, that he's going to be out for an extended period of time. But that's where we're at with him now, so it kind of just makes things a little bit worse. And, honestly, what also doesn't help is in that first couple games that he got to play, I think it was the first 5 games, we didn't see that much. He passed the ball pretty well. In those last 2, I think he had 7 apiece. He shot a lot, and not that many of them went down. I don't think any of his threes went down. I think he made 2 of them. He probably put up 15. And that was kind of it. He kind of got decent minutes. I just pulled it up here. 35, 25, 26, 34, 20. Those are his minutes. Shot attempts, 11, 12, 7, 12, 10. So he's not shooting a lot. I was a little bit hyperbolic there, but they're still not going in. So that's kind of tough to see because those growing pains, that's how you get to the end of the timeline, is you need those kind of stretches where these guys just got to figure it out, right? Killian's growth got stunted because of something like that in his first year. Even Cade was battling stuff in his first year, and then his second season last year, he played all of 10 games and then was done. And you lose so much crucial game experience when something like that happens. Believe me, as a Pistons fan, I understand what this feeling is like. I also understand what it's like to have Jerami Grant as your quality veteran, as the veteran that has been anointed and chosen as the one to navigate you through the rebuild, because you got to pay someone. That payroll has to get filled up, and it was Jerami Grant in this situation. I think the timeline when he signed this contract was he signed it, and then the Dame thing happened, the trade request went through, and everybody was like, did Jerami get screwed? He doesn't give a shit if he got screwed. He doesn't care if Damian Lillard's not there anymore. Look at that contract. Look how much money he's about to make. He does not care how many games Portland loses. Because you know what he sees? You know what Jerami Grant sees? He sees 23 points a game. You want that insurance. You want a guy that it's okay, I guess if we need a bucket, we can go to him. We just did this with him in Detroit. The difference was when it came time to kind of push him out the door, with all due respect to Jerami, it was just hey, all right, go on, go do something else now. It was always going to be a lot easier for us whenever we wanted to do that because he was only on a $60 million contract. Not really going to be able to do that now. Are you going to trade him for a bunch of expirings? Why would Portland do that? I mean, obviously there would be capital attached to it, but why would I trade for expirings? Because then it's just going to free up a bunch of cap space where I'm just going to go get a quality veteran like Jerami Grant anyways. So you're probably going to be riding it out with him. No one's going to come get him for a long time. I don't even think Portland's going to bother calling for a long time. If there's a deal you can't say no to, sure, but I just don't imagine that materializing or manifesting. The Brogdan thing feels a little different. And the most diluted take I have about him, I am very aware that he's 30 years old, which, by the way, is not old, but if we're talking about NBA players, like, you're getting there, right? I'm, like, convinced there's still a Hall of Famer in there. I know he's a 50, 40, 90 guy. I know if he really wanted to, he could put up 15 to 20 triple-doubles in a season. I know he could. But can he stay on the court long enough to do it? Can he play enough games to actually do that? That's what it'll come down to. I don't think he's meant for that roster at all. You talk about Scoot Henderson, you talk about Anthony Simons, just how many guys, how many good guards they have up there. If you want Brogdan around just for the sake of, showing these guys how to keep the ball on a string, sure. But I get it, dude. I get it. And what you're going through right now is a rebuild. Welcome. It does not go the way that you want it to go. It does not go quietly into the night. It's fucking loud. It's noisy. It's obnoxious. It's agonizing. And you will not be able to see that light at the end of the tunnel for a while. I'm not trying to be doom and gloom. I'm just trying to, as a Pistons fan who's been in the shit, who's been in the trenches for a few years now, I still have nights where I don't know if I see the light. I still have nights where I'm like, I know a lot of these players are quality NBA players, but does it happen here? Do they put it together separately elsewhere under a different coaching staff, under a different general manager, under a different coach? It gets scary. You're going to have those moments, especially when your season is derailed by injuries in November. I have no idea where I'm going to splice this in because this is actually all happening in real time, kind of on the fly. I was in the middle of editing the show and then took a 5-minute break to just scroll through Reddit. And I saw this post, and I want to bring this up because I think there's a lot of things to talk about in here. Subject line. Well, let me say this first. I might, just as let me preface this whole thing with that I'm about to do and say I might need to make a new segment called Mad Online, where I get really fired up over inconsequential stuff that does not matter and should not impact my day as much as it does. Okay? So without further ado, here's Mad Online. Subject line, Monty. Here's the body. The team is suffering because he doesn't want to be here. He has a lot going on. This plays a part as to why we only have 2 wins. His passion for basketball is not there right now. Ivy's on the bench. Rotations are fucked. Cade is, I don't know what he is. This is a mess. He's overpaid, and we begged somebody to come here, and that doesn't sit right with me. I never felt it was the right move since it was announced. I just want this team to have the heart and mind of the bad boys and the going-to-work Pistons. At this point, we've been patient enough. Blow this shit up from the front office on down and build around Ivy, Asar, Duren, and Marcus Sasser. When I read that rotations are fucked on November 13th, 2023, I know what that means. I know that that's coded for why isn't Jaden Ivey playing more minutes? Because he was sick, first of all. Why wasn't he playing more before that? Something we're not privy to. But you know what I would say? The guy who is struggling to get minutes, for whatever reason, the Bulls game didn't count. Again, he was sick. He's kind of getting back into, the swing of things. That just is what it is. But that's the guy that they're going to build around? Really? You think? You don't think that's the guy that would be the first out the door? That's the guy that Troy Weaver would first look at as we could get something for you. Because I agree with you that if by the end of the season shit hasn't changed, then somebody's seat's going to be hot. I can tell you it's not going to be Monty Williams. You did not just make him the highest paid coach in the history of the NBA to fire him after one season. You're insane. And by the way, yeah, money was a factor. He had a lot of shit going on, and he still does. That is totally true. The resources, the assets that Tom Gores as an owner made available to Monty Williams to make this job, this process as seamless and as easy on him as it could possibly be, it cannot be overstated. The contract can't be overstated. That was a huge factor. But the only person whose seat would get warm is Troy Weaver. And what that would entail is Tom Gores pressuring him into signing somebody or making a trade for somebody that Troy doesn't really want to do. Because we've already seen we talk about the coaching hiring. Monty isn't who I wanted to see. Who the fuck did you want to see get hired? Kevin Ollie? Be fucking for real, dude. Truthfully, I don't know. Maybe he would have been a good coach, but you don't know either. We don't know. And we're 10 games into the season. Monty Williams is a coach of the year who's been to the NBA Finals. Yeah, he's going through some shit right now, but let's not just say bullshit just for the sake of saying bullshit because the team stinks. If you are shocked that the team stinks, that's not an issue with anybody but yourself. And this isn't targeted at the guy who made the post on Reddit. This is just in general. This is a general sentiment because I've seen this take consistently, right? It's frustrating to me because we've been incredibly patient, but I think what gets lost on a lot of people is how young this team is. And how fucking long this process can take if it's done the right way, which is what Troy has said consistently. And at the risk of sounding like a Troy Weaver apologist, which I might be, I'm teetering. I have been in the past. I haven't been in the past. I don't know. In this moment, maybe I am, because I think this is insane. We've seen... Sorry, I'm going to sidetrack because I meant to say this point a second ago. In the last 6 months, there was this dichotomy in the front office between Troy and, ownership and Tom Gores on who we want to hire as a coach. Tom wanted the big swing. He wanted Monty Williams. Troy Weaver sounded like he wanted Kevin Ollie. And the owner sets the precedent. That's consistent with Tom Gores. Remember Stan Van Gundy? Remember how that tenure went? What was that last big move that Stan Van Gundy made before he got fired? Was that the Blake Griffin trade? Who made him do that? Who was the owner that put a bullet in 2 different Andre Drummond trades because they were like boys? Was that Tom Gores? The guy is going to do whatever he wants, right? That's not going to involve firing Monty Williams. It could involve something drastic next offseason, for sure. I don't want to be the guy who's like, well, the Pistons are only bad because of injuries. That's not true. They're bad because they're bad. They're bad because they're young. But Monty Williams isn't the one that can't get to the free throw line. Monty Williams is not the one who's responsible for blowing a whistle when Cade gets clobbered when he goes to the hole. That's not him. Is Monty shooting threes out there? Is he the one dribbling off of his foot? Is that him? Oh. His passion's not there? What are you talking about? What do you think you mean by that, man? You and I aren't in the gym. Maybe it's not. But you and I aren't in the gym. The team being good is contingent on these players getting experience. Isaiah Stewart hasn't been in the league that long. Jalen Duren, we like to talk about this a lot, but people seem to forget in crucial moments like this when you need to critically think about shit, is 19. About to be 20. Has only been in the league for a year. Cade Cunningham has barely played an NBA season if he's even played that yet in his career. He missed last year. You missed, talk about Portland, right? When you miss crucial development time so early in a rebuild, it extends the timeline and the time frame shifts down a couple years. It happens, man. we were in limbo as a team for so long, trying to win 41 games, trying to crack 400. And if we were able to do that, it was our ceiling, and we could never even do that. Like, we could hardly do that. The last time we went to the playoffs, I don't even think we were 500. I think we were a game or two under. Might want to go back and look at that, because if I'm wrong, that's embarrassing, but I don't think I am. I'm just as frustrated as everybody else, like, believe me. But let's contextualize everything that we're saying and that we're thinking. I'm guilty of not doing it sometimes. Let's just try to think a little smarter. To wrap up today's show, we have another rousing edition of Knicks Pistons. Now, for those of you who only use this podcast as like an audio experience, this segment is a little bit more visual. I will still do my best to describe it as elegantly and as coherently as I can. We did also say I'm not going to do this every single week. There's not always going to be some seismic change that I have to address. I will only do it as I see fit. But since I last recorded over the weekend, the Pistons have played twice. I actually have some things that I want to talk about. So without further ado, Volume 2 of Knicks Pistons. Let's go over the tiers once again. Up at the top, we have number 1 guy, followed by NBA player, followed by I'm mad at them, the illustrious Devin Booker tier after that, and finally, at the bottom, not on the team. As always, let's start with not on the team. Kevin Knox is still in there. He's still in prison. He's still in jail. I'm not taking him out of there. I don't care. Against the Bulls, he was the only guy that could score, like actually the only guy that could score. Went 7 of 8 from the field, led the team in scoring. He was awesome. I was watching the Bulls broadcast. Stacey King was like losing his fucking mind watching Kevin Knox. He could not believe what he was seeing. I made the joke the other day that, OG Fortnite is back. Maybe Kevin Knox is on a heater. I guess where was he dropping? You know what I mean? But for the sake of continuity, I have to be consistent. I am nothing if not consistent. And I'm not going to let the bit die. I'm sorry, Kevin Knox, you're not on the team. James Wiseman played a game for the Pistons. And I hated every single minute of it. James Wiseman not on the team. Devin Booker tier, Jaden Ivey is still in there. He did actually get to play against the Bulls. Only got like 11 minutes. People were up in arms about it and bitching about it and being annoying. The truth and reality is that he's probably just still feeling like he's just getting back into the swing of things. Give it a few weeks. He's going to be fine. Joe Harris still in the I'm mad at them tier despite not playing at all. The only other additions that are worth talking about here, I almost made a new tier called On the List this week, specifically for Marvin Bagley, just because I forgot about him. And I wanted to, celebrate him and be like, no. See, like, we're cool, Marvin. Like, you get your own tier. He's kind of been awesome. Like, he was kind of fun to watch in that Bulls game. He's been efficient this year. Like, he still gets scored on. He doesn't get scored on as much as James Wiseman does, but he still gets scored on. I think he's an NBA player. He goes in the NBA player tier. He hasn't been nearly as frustrating as he has been in years previous. Using him as like a trailer, giving him that trailer pass, that quick dump off in transition and letting him finish. I think that's when he's probably at his best, and we've gotten to see that a few times this season. I'm trying to do a quick, Killian Hayes, no longer in the I'm mad at them tier. I think he's just an NBA player. I kept saying I don't even think he belongs in the I'm mad at them tier because, the truth and reality is he's kind of had the ball on a string this year. Like, he's kind of making passes and finding guys in passing lanes that you were like, that was there? Like, that was a tight window. Jared Goff threw a few passes to Amon-Ra yesterday that was in a tight window. Killian's been doing that a lot this season. You also look at a lot of those shots that he's been taking. I don't know if this is just me, but for the first time in my life, when he puts up those elbow middies, I think they're going in. Most of the time, I think they're going in. It's kind of like, Isaiah Stewart's first year, every time he shot a three, even if it would rim out, it looked good every single time. It looked online every single time. It's kind of like that with Killian. And he's getting a lot of lucky bounces, too. Like, even if he's got such a soft touch, on his jumper, on his floaters, when he goes, when he's playing around the rim. He's got such a soft touch that it'll bounce around the rim. Eventually it'll go in. It'll bounce around 3 or 4 times and then it'll go in. But that's what matters, right? Is the end result. And that is that it goes in. So I'm not mad at Killian anymore. He's not in jail. Kevin Knox still in jail. That's going to be Knicks Pistons for the week. That's your update. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for today's episode of the Coping Hour. If you're listening to this on Spotify, be sure to rate 5 stars. I don't think you cannot leave a review on Spotify. I will catch you guys
Computers now have
in the next one.
Beautiful.
primary control.
Beautiful.
Primary control.
Beautiful.
Primary control.